I understand the need to want to do whatever you want as an artist, but once it becomes a business, it's not all about you anymore. You have to take the audience's desires and wants into account when you're sort of designing kind of your next venture.
It's the Inspiration Place podcast with artist Miriam Schulman. Welcome to the Inspiration Place podcast, an art world insider podcast for artists by an artist, where each week we go behind the scenes to uncover the perspiration and inspiration behind the art. And now, your host, Miriam Schulman.
Well, hey there, my friend. This is Miriam Schulman, your curator of inspiration, and you're listening to episode number 315 of the Inspiration Place podcast. Today, we're talking about a few of my favorite topics: building a YouTube channel, interior design, how to make money from your creative business. And to help me today, our guest started his YouTube channel in 2020 after noticing really a gap in the interior design space on YouTube. As a result, he's created an educational community to discuss all things interior design. He makes it practical, accessible, while at the same time being snarky and funny. The channel now boasts over 600,000 subscribers, and he's here to tell us how he did it. Please welcome to the Inspiration Place, Nick Lewis. Well, hey there, Nick.
Hello. Happy to be here. Hello.
Thanks for joining me. So I made my husband watch one of your videos the other night.
Okay, how'd that go?
Really, really well. I was worried because he doesn't like everything I watch on YouTube. But we watched the one which was about Gen X, millennial, and boomer trends.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely agreed with you about he does not like the plastic furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a Gen Xer. So there was like a moment where he said, you were talking about the moon and stars. What was that, friend?
Oh, the celestial decor. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like, that one, because I did a previous version of that one, and that one came straight out of the comment section. People were like, you need to talk about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that existed.
Well, he said, you had a blanket just like that. I was like, yes, I did.
Yeah.
The blue blanket with the yellow sun and the stars. It was like, holy cow.
Yeah, it was a thing. And I think people love those videos. I did a millennial versus Gen Z one, and then Gen Xers and boomers were like, we need to be in on this as well. So I did one. And then that's sort of what happens sometimes. I sort of find what works on YouTube, and then you kind of double down on whatever works. The audience, I mean, they click on what they want, right? So you got a lot of metrics to tell you sort of the content direction you should sort of go in. And they're fun videos to make. I love them, and the audience loves them too. So that's always a great sign.
Yeah, what I really like about you, Nick, is that you're just not afraid to really tell us what you think. And my God, if like another YouTuber tries to sell me a Tom Ford book or something plastic from Amazon, like, no.
Yeah,
no.
This is really, I think, taken off in the last year, is this line where people are like tired of influencers, content creators peddling crap, and they know why they do, because obviously it's very profitable, but they're kind of sick of it. And it's not that I don't talk about products, but I just think like I don't know how not to be truthful about the stuff I don't like. Like if I don't like something, the audience picks up on it, and I mean, you've seen my videos. I just basically sit there and there's no script. I'm just freestyling. I'm just telling you what I think, and so I can't really lie to camera that way. And so I don't know. I just figure I just try to do right by my audience, and that always means being truthful. I understand some influencers, like, it's hard to make money in this world, but in this creative sort of space sometimes, which I know we're going to talk about today, but lying isn't the way to get there. You know what I mean? Telling people they need more plastic crap. So I find over the last year, people have really enjoyed these videos where I talk about like de-influencing, which is a huge video for me. That got like 500,000 views in like a week or so. Like it was huge. Talking about the stuff you don't need. And I went on a little rant. I did a video last year about Temu, which of course is the huge Chinese massive company that is shipping crazy cheap goods. And I did that video and people really enjoyed it.
All right, here is what I want you to do. When you go over to Nick Lewis's YouTube channel, I want you to comment under his videos and let him know that you're a listener of the Inspiration Place podcast and that you heard him on my show.
I get why people do it, why influencers do it, but I just think the audience is sick of it. I know I am. And so that's why I wanted to share it.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, so I recently started an Amazon influencer channel. They invited me to, and I thought this would be a great way for me to support my book and also reach a new audience. And within a week of opening this channel, I got a message from this lingerie brand offering to send me free laundry because they love my channel. It's like, really? But I haven't posted anything yet. And then I was like, oh, and this is the free underwear brand or whatever it was, pajama brand that influencer XYZ is always pushing. I get it now. So
Yeah.
like,
I mean, I get dozens of those emails a day that come through, and you have to wade through all the stuff because, at the end of the day, if I don't have the trust of my audience, we all pack up and go home. Like I'm under no illusion that like brands that want to work with me or products, whatever, they're using me as a vehicle to sell.
Yeah.
I get that. And so it's like, but if I lose trust with my audience by sharing crap that I don't like, that doesn't do right by them. They all leave me. And then where am I in all this, right? You're going to find another influencer to sell through, right? Like it's not, in the end, I'm the one that loses. So I don't know. I just sort of say what I think. I guess I have been told that a lot, that I tend to share what I think on the internet. I just don't know how to do it any other way. And I just look at it as like, I'm 41. I'm so over trying to pretend like if this all blows up tomorrow, I'll just go get another job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I love doing what I do, but doing it the way that is authentic to me is crucial. If I don't do it that way, then I feel like I've lost and I might as well just pack up and go home.
All right. So we are going to definitely unpack what you were hinting at before is like, how do you make money on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera? Because I know my audience really would love to learn from you about that. But one of the reasons I invited you to the show is you actually value art. Like some of the other people I follow, it's like, yeah, let's just put a print up over here and put two prints that are exactly the same right next to each other. I was like, no, that's not art anymore. So that's one thing, is that like you do value art. But the other thing is when I'm working with artists, sometimes they can have tunnel vision about what it means to be an artist and what it is that they're creating. And they come to me to help them learn to make money. And it's not so much that I want them to not be true to their artistic vision, but there is an intersection where you can push yourself as an artist, and it's like a yes and be more marketable to what the desire is that's already out there. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is really as someone who's in the interior design space about how people could choose art that can also fit in with what is trending. So they don't hang up art on the wall and somebody walks in their house and says, oh yeah, they're a boomer. Right. Who is following the Thomas Kincaid trend or
Kincaid. Yes.
Yeah.
What I would say to that person would be, is this a hobby or is this a business? And I think understand the difference and be honest about which one it is. Because, you could even say, I'll use a YouTube channel as an example, right? Because it's a creative endeavor in a way. It's different art, but it is, right? It's a video production. I'm creating art in a way. It's not the same. I'm useless with a paintbrush or something, but you know what I mean? Like it's still art in its own way. And it's like, do you start a YouTube channel because you want to be a content creator that monetizes their channel? Or do you want to be a person that just uses it as a hobby to create fun videos and therefore you don't care how many views it gets? Because you're basically uploading a video of your vacation to Hawaii for your family or friends to see. Well, you're not monetizing that. You're just using it as a way to share video. It's a hobby. It's not anything more than that. So if it's a hobby, do whatever you want. Like paint it yellow, paint it green, paint it fuchsia for all I care. It doesn't matter. You're not trying to sell it. It's truly just that. And if you're painting truly for yourself or creating art truly for yourself as a hobby, who cares what anybody else thinks, right? But the second it becomes a business, now you're asking someone to give you money in exchange for that. And that's where it starts to become trickier because yes, you want to create what you want, for sure. I love to create videos that I love to make. But at the same time, you need to recognize that it's not just about you anymore. It's about the person on the other side that is actually going to be giving you money in exchange for this product because it's a business now. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like having, like I used to own a juice company in one of my past lives. And like, it's like if I had a juice that it was on my menu, but it was my favorite juice, like my favorite, I loved it. I drank it every morning. if the sales were done, like if it was a dud, I would have pulled the juice because it's a
like
dud.
if you had Brussels sprouts juice. Now I love Brussels sprouts, but not as a juice. Right.
Exactly. Guess what? It's not going to sell. And now you might love it, but it's not there for other people. And so you have to go, at the end of the day, we all recognize that when you have that business, and I know it's different because it doesn't feel creative, but it is a business. You go, okay, well, I ultimately have to pay my employees and I have to pay rent and I've got to pay all my, all the cost of good. I've got a business to run here, right? So I have to hopefully have juice that I like. So using your own palate to be able to guide your decision, but ultimately pull the products that aren't performing. And I think I kind of have that lens when I look at my channel. And whether or not you fully subscribe to the art business, what I'm saying here or not, I still think it's important to sort of look at your business sometimes through that lens of like, is this for me or is this also for the people that I'm trying to sell to? Because the second you demand money for it or you expect that because you're running a business, it's just not about you anymore. You got to also consider what works. And so if you really want to paint everything blue, but your audience is telling you they love red, then, maybe start to think of how you can incorporate more red in or continue to paint blue and get frustrated. That's the reality. Right. You're just going to be frustrated all the time. And I don't think that's a fun way.
I can hear what some of my listeners are thinking right now. Whoa, that's not real art. You're not a real artist. I just want to be a real artist. And that's why I always like to trot out Michelangelo because he wanted to only be a sculptor. And when the Pope came to him and says, paint the ceiling, he was like, but I'm a sculptor. He took the money. It's like, oh, yes, Pope, I will be pimped out to paint this ceiling now. Now, here's a lesson in all this. None of us look at that ceiling and say, yeah, that's not real art. He didn't follow what he wanted to do.
Right. And I do understand that to a certain extent too, right? I do look at my YouTube metrics to find out what videos perform and what videos don't. And I double down on the ones that do. And sometimes I take risks and I creatively take risks and try out videos and then they bomb. And I go, well, that's annoying because I loved that video.
Right.
But, sometimes, people in the YouTube space, they kind of used to say like 2 for them, 1 for me, almost like people have a ratio where they go like, I make 2 videos that I think the audience will love. And then I can create one that's just for me, that I don't think my audience is going to love, but that keeps me in the good graces of the audience where, they get the content that they really enjoy. I understand the need to want to create that and want to paint or do whatever you want as an artist. But once it becomes a business, you're going to have to take the audience's desires and wants, and there's no better way of measuring that sometimes than sales, into account when you're sort of designing kind of your next venture. So, yes, take some risks with blue paint if that's what you want to do and try to find that audience that's going to love what you do there. That's, I think, a huge part of it. But recognize, you don't have to do this, but recognize that, you're kind of going to sometimes be banging your head against a wall if you're just creating stuff that no one wants and expecting it to be a business.
Yeah. So if you're disappointed with sales, if you're doing amazing with sales, don't listen to us.
Oh God, then you're right. Then you've got the perfect match, which is you love what you do and the audience loves what you do. And I'm not saying just go for the audience and forget what you want.
Exactly.
But find ways to create that intersection. That's really what it's about, right? Like I recognize that sometimes, a little secret, I don't want to always make a video about interior design. I would love to make a video that's maybe about something completely different, like a cooking video, but I recognize that no one wants to see me cook lasagna. So I can either create another channel and create another sort of, revenue stream that way and try to make that business work and see if I can make it work. Or I can give the audience what they want, recognize that's my job as the creator, find ways to find it fulfilling at the same time to get that perfect intersection. But just recognizing that once you're asking people for money, it's not all about you anymore. You have to take them in too.
All right. So I've never done this before, but I had an artist incubator client come to me and he wanted to join the inner circle. And he wasn't sure if he'd had the money, but he also had told me he had a sales call booked with a potential collector. So you're going to meet him in a minute. I'm going to let you listen in on our coaching. But I said to him, Daniel, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to let you come to the inner circle tonight as my guest. You don't have to pay any money. And we're going to give you coaching on how to close your sales. He told me that his hope was to make $5,000. I said, I bet you can sell between $5,000 and $10,000. Come to the coaching call tonight. I'll coach you on it. And if you sell at least 5,000, you should just join the inner circle. No problem. Okay. So let's listen in our first coaching session together.
Hello, my name is Daniel Trellenberg. I recently moved down to Austin. Another goal would be $75,000 in sales, but I'm going to aim higher and maybe $100,000 in sales for the year. And my goal for the next 6 months is at least 50,000.
I promised that I would give you some advice on that. And what you're going to do is you're going to let them talk. Do not interrupt. Keep your mouth shut, like lips closed. Okay. So guess what happened? Let's listen in to the inner circle. Of course, he joined the inner circle because this is what happened next. How much did you sell?
Well, I ended up getting 9,200
Wow.
for it. So almost to 10,000. And that was a really good feeling because it was $10,000 closer to my goal. And so now I'm almost there. It was really cool to like experience that, and just literally it was weird. It was like so weird because after the call, literally all the questions and stuff that I had written down, basically like that's how it played out when we went through our call here. I was just like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on, but it feels pretty awesome to know that like what Miriam's coaching us about is actually working.
What do you think was the biggest help for you just to share with the group?
It was like the first question that you had. And I think that really just kind of set the mood or the tone for the whole thing. And then just like being 80% of a listener and then 20% talking is like super important because we like to talk. I like to talk, but it's important when you're trying to sell to listen, because that's where sales, is from. It's from what they want to see in their house.
So that's the power of coaching. You can do this alone, but I can promise you, you're going to go a lot faster with help. And if this is something that you want help with, coaching is going to pay for itself. So to check it out, head on over to schulmanart.com/BIZ. You're going to find information there about the Artist Incubator, or you can simply go straight to apply for the Inner Circle. Our next cohort starts October 1st, 2024, and you don't want to miss it. Again, that's schulmanart.com/B as in boy, I as in ice cream, Z as in zebra. Okay, and now back to the show. So 600,000 subscribers, that's a heck of a lot. And you've been doing this for 4 years. So when did you first start getting traction?
Yeah, so I started in June 2020 and I had never made a video before. So I would never have really thought of myself as a particularly creative person. I studied business. I didn't study interior design. I was like, I always thought of myself as a business person who when I had those juice company, I had a few stores and I loved the design process, but I found that I just decided to start a channel. I mean, I don't really know. I did a renovation. I was trying to figure out what to do. I was stuck at home with everybody else. And I was like, I did learn some stuff. I had worked with different designers. I always appreciated and loved design. So I thought, I'm just going to start a channel. And that was June 2020. I really loved the metrics. I actually, because again, the businessy side of me, I loved seeing what was working, what wasn't, doubling down on what was working. And then, still taking risks along the way, of course. And then by the time I think probably I got monetized in October, but I was probably making like $20-30 a month. And then by the time I got to January, which is not long, like just 2.5 months later, I had a video that went viral, completely blew up. And from January till now, it's been growth from there. So January was the moment where it all kicked off. And that's when I went to over 100,000 subscribers in like a month.
And what was that viral video? We all want to know.
Yeah, it was, again, it's sort of, you mentioned I'm not afraid to say what I think. I think before that, I was doing what I would call a lot of educational content. It was a lot of like how to choose a rug, I did a IKEA PAX wardrobe review. I did like paint colors, how to choose a white paint, very educational stuff, which worked well in the pandemic because people were renovating and whatever. But then people kept saying in the comments, I want to hear more of what you think. And so that video was like, I'm over it, interior design trends that need to go. And I talked about some interior design trends that had been really hot for a few years and just sort of said, I don't like these trends at all. So I think word art or farmhouse was on there. Double kitchen islands was on that list. And it was about an 8-minute video. And it was just me kindly ranting about the design trends that I was quite sick of. And it just really went crazy. I don't know. It just seemed to have struck a chord with people. And yeah, it just took off.
Well, that makes sense because that's the kind of content that I prefer from you also. It's like, yeah, don't tell me if it's Swiss coffee or whatever, because who really cares? And then just make fun of things that aren't really hurtful to anybody. So it's like making fun of a trend. It's like you're making fun of something that doesn't really hurt anybody. Well, it may hurt someone's feelings if they're like married to their potpourri and their blue furry toilet cover, but
it's never personal. And that's, it's anonymous over the internet. And I always think there's like I'm always walking that tightrope of trying to be kind while also reading something to filth. You know what I mean? Like trying to like kind of walk that tightrope of how do you make fun of something while also doing it in a kind and a little bit more gentle way. And I think the audience, for whatever reason about my personality, I don't know why, but that style of balancing those two things seems to have resonated with people. And that's kind of become my brand now.
Yeah, like there was something you had posted recently about, well, if I were to come out with merch, what would that be? And I think what was popular there was a monk that says, well, I love it for you.
Yeah.
It's like, but not for me.
Yeah, I think there was another one I said like aesthetically unappealing, or I said just trying to find ways that are, and I don't, it's not scripted, right? I think that's the thing. It's also just genuinely my personality. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but I am trying to share what I think. And sometimes what I think might apply to some people, but they seem to, I don't know, like it's like, maybe it's just the Canadian in me that's like people find like I'm being kind, but also roasting things. And I think, I don't know, that seems to have resonated.
Yeah. So I discovered you around the time I was selling my house when the real estate agent and the stager kindly let me know that, brown furniture from Ethan Allen isn't really in style anymore, that you bought when you got married and you thought was super cool and you thought would never go out of style. Guess what it did? So can we get rid of as much as we can before we try to sell this house? So that's when I started. I was like, I had no clue. I had no idea this stuff had got like, really, a camelback sofa is not timeless. I had no idea. I didn't know that a roll arm sofa was going to go out of style. Like, I thought this was forever. So
who knew?
Right now I do. So that's when I discovered you. I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, people seem to love there's something about watching a video and thinking, number one, am I going to be on this video? In which case there's a bit of fear that I'm going to be called out any second. But again, it's safe. It's like you're sitting there on your phone, you're on your couch, whatever. You're being called out, but you're doing it in a way that's not like a friend or someone who's coming to your house saying, oh my God, your sofa is hideous, right? Like it's done in a way that you feel like it's gentle. And also at the same time, that camaraderie of a person that's like, I love interior design, but I want Nick to make fun of something that I also don't like, right? There's like,
yes,
there's I don't want to get called out, but it's funny if I do. But also if I don't get called out and he calls out something that I also hate, that's fun too. So I think people enjoy that aspect of the videos.
Well, it's like when my husband said, you had one of those celestial blankets.
Like,
I absolutely did. Like, I thought that was cool too. So I want to bring this back to our listeners who may be content creators themselves. I know for me that the most popular podcast episodes and my content is always the 5 things you don't want to do, the 5 biggest mistakes of. So if you're, for example, an art teacher, like the 5 things never to do with your watercolors or the 5 whatever. So just so you know that in general, what we're talking about also will work for you for anything you put on the internet. People always, in fact, they prefer the what not to do even more than the what to do. I found. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think a lot of content creators, they create the thumbnails and stuff and the titles even before they start. I don't go that far to create the thumbnails before I do the video, but a lot of people work on the positioning on what you're going to say before you actually sit down to film, right? So I have a method that I do. It's just basically make sure that I know exactly what the title is going to be and how it's going to be positioned, because sometimes it's not about saying, like, you might say the same information, but structuring it in a way I think that the audience is going to connect with, and they're going to want to know. It's like there's something beyond the door, and you're like, what's beyond the door? What's on the other side of this? You want to create sort of that mystery in the content to kind of get people hooked on what's on the other side of that door. So like what you're saying is true. Like if I were to do a paint color video, if I were to say the 5 best paints from Benjamin Moore, that might get some clicks. But if I were to say, do not paint your house these 5 colors, people want to know what that means. Like, well, what if I have the 5 paints?
Yeah.
I don't want to make those mistakes. I don't want to paint my house a crappy color. So sometimes it does feel like it's going negative on social. It doesn't always have to be positioned negatively, but just being really mindful of like, how is this going to land to the audience? Because sometimes I have really good ideas for videos, but I just can't think of how I'm going to position it so that it's going to actually get clicks. No one's going to watch it. It's like, oh, I think it would be really interesting to do this video, but I can't quite find the angle the audience is going to get in on. You know what I mean? That they're going to really enjoy and actually click and watch. The hook. Can't always picture the hook.
Pull back your curtain a little bit and tell us, what is your process for choosing a title and content for a video?
Yeah, so I have an employee as well, so we work on this together. But a lot of what I'm doing is I typically, like, I have a Milanote is the software that I use, which I really enjoy. And Milanote is kind of like Evernote, but for creative. So it's a lot more visual.
Can you spell that again?
Yeah, Mila, Note, Milanote.
Okay, perfect.
I love Milanote. I have my whole life in Milanote now, but that's not an endorsement. It just is. It's just great. And so what I do is I create a board for each YouTube video, and that's where I put all my photos and any like clips and stuff that we want to add in, put any notes that I want to say in the video. And that's what I use to actually go sit down in my living room. But basically, when we're coming up with topics, I'm looking at, just ideas that come to us. I'm looking at, which I mean, seems generic, but sometimes you're just around town and you're just like, I should do a video on that. Sometimes it's seeing what works on other people's social media channels. So not necessarily related to interior design, but let's say I'm watching a finance channel and they'll say some topic that I'm like applies to finance, but I'll be like, I could twist that and turn that in that same sort of little nugget and turn that into interior design. And again, I will look at the views. So if I know it's performing well on their channel, it's probably going to perform well on mine, right? So I'm being mindful of like what is gaining traction on the platform. I do look at other platforms, TikTok, Instagram, see what sort of series people are doing. I also double down on what's working. If I have a video that's performing really, really well and people are loving it, then I'll go, 5, like I did a video on like 5 impractical home decor. So these are beautiful items that are just really impractical. People loved it, turned it into a series, did a part 2, did a part 3, right? So sometimes there's a lot of that as well. And I have topics, just like broad topics, like what's new at IKEA, because people love IKEA. And I kind of revisit those every few months. And before you know it, that populates my whole calendar. So it's actually not that hard to come up with ideas.
So you have like certain categories that you're always looking to fill. Like this was inspired by something in other industries.
Yeah.
This is the IKEA rotation. This is the de-influencer.
Seasonal. Like if
seasonal.
It's Christmas time is coming, so I'll do a decorating video, probably get that scheduled in for early November. So when you're a content creator, it's a lot of a live and die by a content calendar, right? It's like, here's the calendar for the year, slotting in videos. And then if there's sponsors, that sort of feeds into it. So I don't do a lot of creators will do a video specifically because it's tied to a sponsor, so, they might do I don't know, Sony might come to them and say, we want to do a video with a person who does photography. Well, you might do a video on photography sponsored by Sony, but it has to go live on a certain date. So I don't do a lot of those, but that's also part of the story is like, is there a sponsor that kind of motivates when something would go live? But that's it. You're basically, there's just this march of this content calendar, and you're always just slotting in all these different ideas from all these different buckets of ways you sort of find and source great content.
Yes, the Artist Incubator teaches you strategy. You'll see results immediately because accountability, community, and coaching keeps you motivated. Previously, you learned how Daniel made $9,200, But beyond the results you can expect from making more art sales is the support you'll receive from your peers. Listen into this mastermind session as artists share their takeaways.
I mean, hearing other people believe in it, that's the greatest takeaway. It's hard for me to personally believe in it, but having other people say, yeah, that's too cheap, or, other people say that they see what I'm doing and it's valuable is very helpful.
And I just love listening to everyone's conversations, to be honest with you. Like, just listening, you learn something about not only the person, but about yourself and your own fears.
To learn more about the Artist Incubator, go to schulmanart.com/BIZ. That's B as in ball, I as in icicle, and Z as in zebra. And now, let's return to the inspiration place.
How far in advance are you batching your content, and what is the size of your team? That's 2 questions.
Yeah. So sometimes I'm sitting there, we're editing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the video going live on Saturday. Not proud of that, but sometimes that does happen.
Okay.
I love to be 3-4 videos out would be amazing. So usually what I'll do is I don't usually batch a lot. It kind of takes a lot out of you to film because it's so high energy and whatever. And honestly, I just noticed that if I'm filming 2 or 3 or 4 videos in a row, which is like a month's worth of content, it really takes it out of you. So I just tend to try to stick to 1 a day. I have 2 editors who work for me part-time. Well, 3 kind of, but I really only use the 3rd one maybe a few times a year. But the 2 main ones that I use, and that's great to have 2 editors because that means that if I do since I do 1 video a week, it means I can start to get ahead. If I only had 1, I would just be on that treadmill. And so would he, but I was able to have 2. And so that's great. I sort of kind of split them off, do 1 each 1 week. And if it takes a week to make a video, that means that I can double up. What I try to do is if I can get 3 or 4 weeks out, that also means that theoretically I can go on holiday and I can go on vacation for a week, which you should build into, even as an entrepreneur, that you should build in some time off. And I can, if I'm sick, for example, or I want to take a vacation, I can do that knowing that Saturday's video is up and live and ready to go. So ideally, 3 or 4 weeks would be amazing. Does it always happen? No. Sometimes life gets in the way and I start slipping back and I go, oh, I need a video for Saturday, but I'm trying to get ahead of it. I have my 2 editors part-time and I also have a full-time employee as well.
Okay. And what does the full-time employee do?
So she's doing a lot of the video ideas for sure, gathering a lot of the photos for me. So we work together on a lot of that. So typically how we do the edit is that I go in and film. So she kind of preps a lot of the video. So do I. Sometimes I prep, sometimes she does. I go in front of the camera, I film. We send all the photos and any video B-roll over to the editor. I send my A-cut. So that's me in front of the camera. And I basically tell my editors, like, you have full creative control. Like if I say something stupid, cut it out. If I say something great, keep it in. Like do whatever you need to do to create a coherent first edit. And I'm not married to my content. Like if I'm like, I think I made a good joke there. I'm like, I don't care. I don't even remember what I say half the time. So I let them go do their thing. We get version 1 back, which might take 2 or 3 days. And then we watch version 1. And then we basically put a bunch of comments in Frame, which is a software that's used for video editing a lot. And you can timestamp all your comments. We basically put new photos in. We tell them to change this, change that. And then we work off of version 1, 2, 3, sometimes even version 4. And that's what then makes it to YouTube. So my employee, she's doing a lot of that revisions as well, because watching a half an hour video and providing a ton of feedback might take you a good 2 or 3 hours. And meanwhile, I'm doing Instagram and TikTok. She also does some editing as well. So it's kind of a team effort, really. The only thing I can't outsource is me in front of the camera.
Right.
But everything else, she's really good at I'm almost at a point now, which as an entrepreneur is amazing, where I can have a video prepped for me. I can sort of approve it, get in front of the camera, and then hand it off and basically almost get it to YouTube with just my team.
That's great. So I'm going to pretend that my listeners want to know about my process too and just answer that question. So with podcasting, I love to be a month ahead, meaning that by middle of June. So right now, Nick and I are recording on June 20th. So I actually feel a little bit behind because the mid of the week, I like to have all of the following week recorded. That doesn't mean they're produced, but they're recorded. This is podcast world. And I have 1 editor on my podcast. And I also have somebody who's full-time on my team who kind of does quality control and all the other things that are not editing. YouTube, we don't really have a system yet. I love your idea of having 2 video editors because we only have one. And I have a team member who does many other things, not the podcast person, but a different one who does many other things. And it's almost like in her spare time, she helps with the YouTube. But I can see how it's really a full-time job that we probably need to expand our team if I want that to be like a real channel. I mean, it's a real channel, but like that is to make that work as well as the podcast channel does.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. They're also a husband and wife team. So it's even better because it's like, they sort of trade off each other as well, right? So if one of them is busy, the other one can sort of take it. And that is super helpful. And then when she's doing a lot of that video production stuff, honestly, like even things like brand partnerships, negotiating all my different brand contracts, reading all the contracts, going back, redlining them, reaching out to brands I want to work with, responding. Where I have 2 managers as well. So they're non-exclusive. So I manage a lot of my own partnership stuff, but I have a couple of people that when they find great partners that want to work with me, they reach out to me and we go through a lot of that negotiation. So a lot of that work is also quite a bit of time. And that's sort of what I do as well. So she doesn't really touch that as much. That's more me.
Okay. So you have contractors that help you though find brand partnership. Am I right with what I heard you say there?
Yes. I'm a big believer in like, I think that contractors can be great for mastering a skill that I don't have. Like I know how to do everything in my business, but I'm not the best at everything in my business. You know, like I know how to edit a video. I edited all my videos from that June that I started until probably a year. That first year, I pretty much edited almost every video, but I'm not as good of an editor as my editors are. So yes, I know how to do it. I know how to communicate with them. I know what they're saying when we have conversations about it, but I also know that they're better at it than me. The same goes for a lot of the brand partnerships. I know what my rate is. I know what's a good contract and what's a bad deal, but they're experts in their field. So it's nice to have contractors to lean on when they have skills in areas that you just don't have.
That's amazing. Okay. So Nick, you told us you were making $20 a month in October 2020.
Yeah.
And I thought you said you would share what you're making now. Am I right? Or should I edit that part out?
I'm an open book. Yeah,
okay,
I don't care.
Cool.
Well, I remember talking to my mom that October, and I was like, I have this very clear memory where I was like, I think this like YouTube thing, which at first, let's be honest, I was a 38-year-old YouTuber. So I was like, this is a dream job for a 14-year-old, right? Like I'm not feeling like, I was like, it's a weird job to be 38 and be like, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel. Like, so my friends were all like, that's cool. Why is Nick talking about IKEA on the internet? Like it was kind of weird. But I remember saying to her, I was like, this YouTube thing, I think it's going to pay my cell phone bill for this month. And she was like, oh, that's lovely. Like, good for you. And then I remember
no, she's probably thinking, so can I get you off of my plan now?
Yeah, exactly. She was like, well, that's great. It's nice to have a little bit of extra little money on the side. You know, that's fun. And then I remember talking to her in like December. So like 6 weeks later, maybe a month later. And I was like, I think it's going to pay my mortgage. And she was dumbfounded because, of course, when I was growing up, like, that was the thing. Like, no matter what happened, you pay the mortgage. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going out for dinner. You're not getting any new clothes for the month. Like, we're cut off there. No vacations. But the mortgage is getting paid because, well, the bank's not impressed when you don't. So she was like, that's incredible. Like, that was amazing. And then it shifted, I would say. So then I started, I think my first January, I'm going to try to convert to US dollars just because I'll have to do the math from Canadian.
No, just say Canadian dollars. And we have an international audience anyway.
Okay,
so
good. Yeah.
So I want if they can't convert it.
I wanted to say that January, I think it was something like 20 something thousand US in the month of January, which wow. I was completely blown away that was possible. Literally sitting in your living room making fun of stuff that you see from Home Goods.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like I was like, how is that a job? Like what a wild world. Then I started doing brand partnerships, which of course I signed contracts that I cannot state how much I make for brand partnerships, but
fair.
I would still say that a video on average can make me anywhere between like a not great video might make me $1,500, $2,000. A good video, like not an amazing video, but like a pretty average one might make me $4,000 or $5,000. So if you think of that, and that's what I make on Google AdSense, which is the skippable ad you see at the beginning of YouTube, if your audience doesn't know. So that's that skippable ad. that's already YouTube taking its cut. So you think all the brands on that channel have paid double that. So if I made $4,000, that means YouTube's made, let's say, $4,000. So
Okay.
do you know what I'm saying? Like in total, the brands have probably paid 8 to be, if I'm making 4, they're paying 8 because after YouTube's cut. So if you think of that's what I charge for a regular old skippable ad, a lot of these sponsored posts are going to be usually more than that because you're getting my endorsement and the creative and the production and all the rest of it. So that kind of gives you an idea in terms of what a brand partnership would be worth. But of course, I obviously can't speak to the individuals. So overall, I mean, probably in AdSense is about 40% of my revenue. Brand deals are maybe, because I don't sponsor every video, probably around there. And then I have affiliate links and a few different other sources of revenue. But let's say AdSense is probably around 30, 40 grand a month.
Okay.
And
so
then,
fair to say you are like a 2 comma mama at this point?
Yeah, I think, I would probably say as a business, after I pay everybody, it's probably close to getting close to around the $1 million.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Which is like, it's quite insane. Like I am not, think for a second, it's not lost on me like how crazy it is. Like I'm really quite blown away by the response of how that is even possible now.
Which is why you don't have to push acrylic milk containers to us, because that's not where it's at for you.
It's just not where it's at for me. And that's the thing. Like if you are a content creator, I get it because it's like, if you want to make this a job, I totally understand that when Temu comes and offers you a check, like I'm in a position where I'm very privileged. I'm able to say no to that. And I've said no to some, for sure, 5-figure deals around some of these partnerships because I'm at a point where it's like, I don't have to work with you. I can work with somebody else and I don't have to do that. But I also recognize that if you want to pursue an artistic kind of creative career in content, it's not always really, and also it's not always possible. It's sometimes, when you got to make rent and that's the person that comes to you, like I do get it. But if you can, then stick to the truth because that's going to reward you in the end.
Okay. And is it fair to say, Nick, that when you first started out, you were less picky about things that came your way, or have you always been, no, I'm not doing that?
Yeah, I would say that the thing is for me is that because it happened so quickly, that's not to say when I started in June, I was making videos and making zero, right? So I was making videos and they weren't even making me $1, right? So that's true for every content creator on YouTube. You're not making money until you are. And so you have no line of sight that you don't think that building a business like mine is going to happen. And to be quite honest, it's unlikely. So, that's not really going to happen for you. So I didn't make any money until that first cell phone bill payment in October, June, July, August, September. But even that's quick, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And then once that January hit, where I was like, okay, this is big. And that was a bit of a spike, to be fair. Like I probably February went back down to like 8 to 10. But even then I was thinking 10 grand, this is 120 grand a year. This is amazing for sitting in my living room. So it gave me the ability to say no. And actually the manager that I ended up working with, he came to me. I had a bunch of agencies reach out and said, we want to manage you. We want to, be your manager and get you all these brand deals. And I said no to all of them because I was just like, I don't want to say yes to something that I'm going to regret. And so I did say no until finally I was like, I spoke to him on the phone. I really liked him and I thought he was really genuine. So I think I took my first brand deal in April of 2021. So about 4 months after that sort of blow up kind of happened. So by that point, I was already making good AdSense money. So I already felt like I didn't need to take the acrylic organizers, to your point. Yeah. So I would say I went from like 0 to 60 pretty quick in that sense. And so it all went by so quickly, I didn't have time. But I do understand that a lot of creators are literally doing that for years to try to get to the point where they're able to work with a brand. And so, that's a bit of a different situation.
And sometimes that is why you catapulted, is because you had such a clear vision from the get-go. Or no, you disagree with that?
No, I do. I think so. I do love being a creative and like obviously making fun videos, and the fact that my next video is whatever I want it to be. Like I love the autonomy of doing what I do. My next video, I can say what I want. I don't have anybody really, YouTube doesn't call me up and say, hey, you've offended Wayfair because you made fun of one of their things in the video. Like I can make fun of whatever I want and like no one says anything. It's still family friendly content. I don't really swear or anything like that. So I can do what I want and that's really great. But yeah, I really fell in love with the process of like seeing the views go up, seeing the subscribers go up. Like that was a fun game to see like how far can I take this? And then before you know it, it was a business.
Yeah, and I'm just going to share one more little tidbit before we wrap up. Like Nick will actually say, well, they're not sponsoring this part of the video. I was like, oh my gosh. I don't even remember what it was in reference to.
It was in reference to Wayfair.
It was Wayfair. It was because it was like Wayfair had sponsored. And then it was like later, I was like, well.
Yeah, it was, they sponsored the beginning. And honestly, they're a great sponsor to work with because they wanted me to shout out their channel. And I said, yes. And they're honestly really great. And I literally have a video that's Buy This, Not That, the best and worst products on Wayfair that came out like 3 weeks ago. And I don't know if they watched it. Listen, I don't really know. But then later on in the video, I think, I said like something about Kelly Clarkson collection on Wayfair. And I'm like, who sponsored this video? But they didn't sponsor this part. And I just,
yes,
but
that
here's
was
the
it.
thing. Like to me, I care, but I don't care. You know, like I care about my audience. I care about but at the same time, it's like, that joke to me is more important than Wayfair calling me up and saying, hey, we're not going to pay you your money or we're not going to work with you again. I'll be like, well, that's fine. But like the joke stands. Like,
because the joke woke me up. And it's kind of like, how did Greta Gerwig get to make a whole feature movie making fun of Barbie?
Yes.
Because Barbie understood that was good for business. Like, it's not bad for business that you were also making fun of it.
I think they kind of sort of get it. I mean, and I even have said that in the thing with brands before. I've made fun of Wayfair, but I kind of love that they understand it because all I say is like, there's something for everybody. And it's true. Their whole thing is there's something for everybody on Wayfair. And there's a lot on Wayfair that's not for me. So they kind of just love that. And I don't know, I think just people, like to me, it's about the connection with the audience, making sure the joke lands, making sure like if I can make people laugh, that's worth it. I'll happily give Wayfair their money back. You know what I mean? Well, not happily, but I would, you know, but if they said, we'll never work with you again, I'll just be like, okay, well, I'll work with somebody else because the audience is there and the views are there. And so if you have the views and you have the audience and you have that trust and that connection, there's always going to be brands that are like going to want to work with you. So I always just, you know, yes, the person that directly pays me is the brand. But again, taking it back to what we were saying earlier about it being a business, the business is ultimately you, the viewer. You're my customer. Making you happy as a customer, even though you're not paying me, but you're kind of paying me through your eye, like watching my stuff.
Attention.
So
paying through attention. Yes.
Paying through attention. So to me, you're my customer. And so if I make you laugh and you watch and you click, because you get to the end of a Nick Lewis video and go, that guy's funny, I want to see that again. That's what it's all about. Like, it's not about making sure Wayfair is happy. I picked up on so many of these channels and it just feels like so much of it is, you know, I've talked to creators and they say, basically, I don't make content unless it's attached to a sponsor now, because that's the way that they have to make money. And I'm like, that sucks. Like, I don't feel like I'm in that position.
Yeah. All right, Nick. So what we've done is we've linked up in the show notes. This is episode 315. So wherever you're listening to your app, the show notes are there, or you can hop on over to my blog, schulmanart.com/315. We are going to link up his YouTube channel, but also that episode I mentioned about millennial versus Gen X versus Gen Z versus what were the other people? Boomers.
The boomers. Yeah. Don't forget about the boomers.
Okay. Yeah. We got all of us. Nobody is safe for being, you know,
nobody's safe when it comes to bad design.
Exactly. Okay. We've all done it. Here is what I want you to do. When you go over to Nick Lewis's YouTube channel, I want you to comment under his videos and let him know that you're a listener of the Inspiration Place podcast and that you heard him on my show. So do you have any last words for our listeners before we call this podcast complete?
Yeah, I would just say your audience is already creative, right? So you've already got the creative part down, and no matter where you kind of are in your journey, you have to just try to find that intersection of that place where you love what you do. You're able to be, you know, creative in your own way, because that's what the world needs more of. But then at the end of the day, you know, if you're moving this into a business, just think of what does your audience want? What does your customer want? And just double down on that. You'll never go wrong if that's what you do.
I love that. All right. So love your buyer. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'll see you the same place, same time next week. Until then, stay inspired. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Inspiration Place podcast. Connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/SchulmanArt, on Instagram @SchulmanArt, and of course on schulmanart.com.